This 10-minute daily drawing exercise to do in 10 minutes is a bit of a push, but I decided rather than have a whole lot sped up at the end, I actually wanted to keep it nice and fast. So I decided that I would draw more gesturally than I have for some of these and try and fudge some of the details a little bit, but in a way that's consistent with the architecture and the reality of the detail. So in other words, being loose with how we represent something shouldn't make it look wrong. It shouldn't look out of place, but instead just make it look a little less detailed, but we're still seeing what we expect to see. The essence of the structure is still there. So I started with this, the second column that we can see on the left, and as you can probably anticipate by now, I'm going to start by drawing the gap between these two columns on the left side of the center column, I guess, and use that as a measuring point. So I want to get my tower tall enough. It is tall, but I don't want it to be too tall and too skinny. Proportions are always tricky, particularly when we're drawing a space between two columns such as this, because the shapes that we see between them, particularly those really clear and distinct windows, do mess with our perception of the proportions of the actual space between the columns, as if we were seeing it with nothing there at all except bare smooth wall. So it does make it trickier when there are things interrupting our ability to see a whole shape uninterruptedly. It is worth knowing that, and if possibly you have trouble getting proportions correct with things such as this, it may be that you're not taking into account the almost optical illusion that other shapes in and around the shape we're drawing can cause. Now you can see how I've decided just to lightly indicate the window leading. I haven't gone heavily on the glass because that's not the effect that we have here. Not that I'm going to have time to do the values for the shade and shadows. I won't have time for that. But it is still nice to get a little bit of easy and fast to do value in some parts to help give a sense of 3 dimensions to this shape, even if it doesn't give a huge indication as to the sun. And we do have these statues, these figures, around the base. Now, I wasn't sure how much of the base I was going to draw at all, as in under the corners that the statues sit on, but I realised partway through this that probably none was going to be the answer. One thing I find after I do these 10-minute daily drawing exercises is that almost always I really want to have another go doing the same drawing again and to maybe spend 15 or 20 minutes on it and do a better job, because in some ways I feel like I've done my preparatory exploring. I feel like I've learned all these things in doing it, and I really now want to put them into practice with a slightly more considered drawing. I don't mean an hour long, but just something with a little more time and a little more focus. And of course, there's nothing to stop anyone doing this if they've got time and they want to. And while the most benefit would be had by doing this immediately after the first 10 minutes, if it ends up being later in the day or a few days later, that's also not a problem. We still retain a lot of what we've seen and thought and worked out for a while. And drawing the same thing again will trigger a lot of that mind memory, observation memory, and muscle memory. So I'm really going fast and furious on this foreshortened side. I'm thinking, well, it doesn't really need to show much detail because we're really not going to look at it. We're really going to look at the front 2 sections. But there is a little bit of fiddling with these pedestals that the statues stand on, and just trying to align them and to align them to the columns correctly and to capture this curve, which may not be pronounced enough in my drawing. fair bit of stopping and asking what's happening here, doing the statues. The one of the problems I had with this is that having drawn the architecture already, I really needed to position the statues where they needed to be. But I drew the pedestals first, and the pedestals weren't always in the place that they needed to be to have the statue's head where it needed to be. And so basically I redrew the pedestals to reposition them, and I don't think that's obvious at all in the drawing. So now I'm coming down with the final bay that we really see. There's just a hint of the further along column that we see peeking out from behind this one. But there is this cornice to do, this overhanging cornice to do. And working out all of these elements. In some ways, this sort of architecture becomes easier once we've been doing it for a little bit, and it's probably good to actually even do an advanced drawing of this or of part of this to get a sense of how to represent the ins and outs of these bases and the cornices that come in and out, and how the viewing position changes, how they overhang, what's underneath them, and so forth. Because there is a pattern, and learning to spot the patterns, learning to see how, as say, a row of columns disappears down in one direction, how what we see of the capital changes from the first column to the last column. If we appreciate that, then we can realize that even if it's gesturally, we can step the changes bit by bit from the first column to the last column and get a really nice sense of realism in what we do. That's got nothing to do with how precisely or gesturally we've actually drawn the lines and put the marks. So now, ironically, having forgotten to do the statues at the right time down below, I'm thinking, oh, I'll put the statues in up here, and didn't realise that they're actually not statues, or not until I draw on the first one. They're actually urns. So, not that anyone's going to put any flowers in them up here, I don't think. This is the new town hall tower in Berlin. It is pretty old, but the older one was much older. So, and this building survived pretty much unscathed after the war. Now, this is where I probably did my most obvious mess up. Oh, after I put these urns in. And that was with the dome. Now, the dome does seem to be stretched upwards a little bit. It's not a hemisphere. It's not a half sphere. It does seem to stretch slightly as it goes up. So I wanted to make sure I put enough stretch in it. And so I put marks where you can see where I thought it would come onto each side. And then I put a mark, well, I haven't done them yet, but I'm about to do that, which is how I position domes. I put the mark where I want the dome to end onto the drum or whatever it goes onto. And then I put a dot to let me consider that as the top point of the dome. And I just took it up a little bit too high, I think. I do correct it at the end after I've done everything else, just to see whether I think it looks better. So you tell me what you think. Now, I didn't think that looked that bad at this point, but when I put the figure on top, it did look a bit too pointy. No, it is a bit too pointy. It's a bit too much of the other end of the egg to how the other one looks. And so now I do the platform, and now maybe I did the platform and the statue a little bit large, and that might have given the visual impression that the dome was a bit pointier on top than it really is, because we tend to see the base of the statue as part of the dome structure. But I think it has just gone up a little bit too far. And my statue is a bit too large because when I began to draw it, I kind of messed it up a bit. And so I had to make what I thought was first the head into the torso, and then I had to add the head on top of that. So we're basically done our 10 minutes now, and I think that's it. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. What do you think? If you found this interesting, please hit the like button and help me out. The more I looked at this, the more I thought, no, the dome does point up too high. It's not just the effect of an overlarge statue and statue base on top. It does go up too high. So in a moment, you'll see me place a line to correct it, because it was really annoying me watching it and seeing it. But of course, you'll find this reference photo on my channel community page. So why not give a go? And why not tell me your experience? I was surprised what a challenge this was to draw in 10 minutes. I actually thought it was a more achievable subject for the time than I think it turned out to be. I used a 0.2 millimeter pen to do my line work. In my exploratory marks, I used a 0.3, but it just seemed to be a bit thick for the scale and the detail. So there I've placed a line where I think the top of the dome should have gone, and then I could have put the statue on that. And I think that would have given me a more perhaps accurate finish compared to our reference. But let's see how you go with yours. I hope you're doing these. They're on a playlist to make it easy to find them so that you can do them all. I think it's about time possibly that I found some nice references of trees and perhaps some more natural subjects to do as a 10-minute drawing exercise, because it's good to keep our skills going over a wide range of subjects, because they challenge our creative thinking in different ways. But hey, whatever you're drawing, however you're drawing it in 10 minutes or more, whether it's an architectural building or a tree, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.